The Man Who Accidentally Got Married, Part 2. As Tom stared at the burly men at the door, panic grew inside him. Sophie's words echoed in his ears. "My dad is a mafia boss." Taking a deep breath, he opened the door. One of the men, wearing dark sunglasses, shot him a sharp look and said, "Mr. Parker, Mr. Donnelly would like to meet you." Tom froze in shock and stammered, "Mr. Donnelly?" Sophie, holding a coffee cup from the kitchen, called out, "My dad, I mean. Don't worry, he just wants to meet you. I'm sure he'll love you." Tom's stomach churned. Becoming the son-in-law of a mafia boss? His life had already veered far from ordinary, but this was too much. However, there was no escape. The men ushered Tom and Sophie into a black limousine. The car stopped in front of a grand villa. Armed men in black suits patrolled the garden, making Tom more nervous with each step. When they entered the mansion, they were greeted by a charismatic man waiting for them in a spacious living room, none other than Mr. Donnelly himself. Smiling, Mr. Donnelly said, "Ah, so this is the famous groom." But that smile sent chills down Tom's spine. With a shaky voice, Tom began, "Mr. Donnelly, this is all just a misunderstanding. We were just—" Mr. Donnelly raised his hand, silencing him. "Ah, even if a marriage starts as a misunderstanding, it can turn into a true love story, right?" He then narrowed his eyes and added, "But if you hurt my daughter, Parker, there will be consequences." Tom's throat went dry. He quickly nodded. Of course, of course. I would never hurt Sophie." Mr. Donnelly clapped his hands, signaling the conversation was over. "Great. We're hosting a big dinner tonight to celebrate this marriage. We'll talk more then," Mr. Donnelly said. During the dinner, Tom met Sophie's family. Her brother, Marco, eyed him suspiciously. It was clear Marco didn't trust him at all. At one point, Marco leaned in and asked sarcastically, "So, Parker, what do you do for a living?" Tom awkwardly replied, I'm an accountant." Marco burst into laughter and turned to the others at the table. "Did you hear that? The guy works with numbers. I wonder what kind of future he can offer my sister." Tom turned bright red with embarrassment, but Sophie stepped in and said, "Enough, Marco. Tom is amazing." Later that night, Sophie pulled Tom aside in the garden. "My dad accepted you, that's good news," she said. "But you'll have to deal with Marco. He's always been like this." Tom took a deep breath. "Sophie, this is getting crazier by the minute. We need to annul this marriage. I just want to go back to my normal life." Sophie paused for a moment and then looked straight into Tom's eyes. "Normal? Do you really want a normal life, Tom? You've been complaining about being ordinary for years. Maybe this is your chance to change your life." Just then, loud shouting erupted from inside the house. Marco and another man were storming toward Tom. "I won't accept this," Marco yelled. "This guy is not right for you, Sophie." As Tom tried to back away from Marco's fury, a table was knocked over and chaos broke out. Tom suddenly found himself in a fist fight with Marco. Strangely enough, this fight might actually prove to Sophie and Mr. Donnelly that Tom was a strong enough man for the family. All of this was a clear sign that Tom's ordinary life would never be the same again. But where would fate take him? While trying to build a real relationship with Sophie, he would also have to survive in the dangerous world of the Mafia. Just when Tom thought everything was falling into place, Sophie leaned in and whispered in his ear, "There's something else I need to tell you." So, what happens next? Don't miss the next episode.